friends. Thank you for bearing with me while I figure out what kind of intro I would like to do for this podcast. The intro that I did on the first episode was the initial idea that I had for the podcast, but once I did it and heard it back, I don't know, it's just not quite what I wanted. So we're trying a little bit different music today. We're just gonna jump straight into what the topic is. We're gonna flow with it. We're gonna take our time, see what feels right. So I had this whole topic planned out of talking about success today, but boundaries have been very prevalent on my mind the past few days. So I'm very unprepared for this topic, but we're just going to see where it goes. So we're going to be talking about boundaries today, and I would also like to compare what a boundary is, what an expectation is, and what standards are. These are all my definitions, of course. But it feels so fitting that the topic has changed because we are experiencing, today is the January 13th, 2025. We are experiencing the very first full moon of the 2025 year. It is a full moon in Cancer. Cancer is a zodiac sign that is associated with lots of emotions. We also have Mars retrograding in Cancer right now, and the nodes of fate, the North Node and the South Node, have just recently, on the 11th, shifted from Aries and Libra to Pisces and Virgo. So we have a lot of water energy, lots of emotions, lots of higher thinking, lots of intuition. I love I love astrology and the zodiac, so if you don't care about any of this, you can fast forward through. But with the full moon in Cancer, I have been feeling a lot of my emotions coming up to be released, surrendering to the flow of things right now, at least for the next couple of days while the moon is full. But it is our very first full moon of the year, so the energy is heightened as well. So it just feels very fitting that today's topic turns out to be boundaries instead of success. I feel like maybe the success topic will come more in Aries season instead of Capricorn season, but we'll see. So boundaries. I'm sure most of us have heard somebody talk about having boundaries. It's kind of one of those like popular hit words. It's in fad right now. But I don't know that a lot of people talk about what a boundary actually is. So today I wanted to talk about the difference between a boundary and an expectation and standards. So you can look up yourself on Merriam-Webster or Oxford what the definition of a boundary is, but I would like to give my example of what I define boundary as. So for me, a boundary is a guideline you give to others to show them how you will accept being treated. So telling somebody my time is valuable to me, so I will not plan meetings with you if you refuse to be on time. That to me is a boundary. And it's something that we set for ourselves too. So it's a guideline that you give to yourself to remind yourself how you will accept being treated. So you can say, my time is valuable. I will not plan more experiences and meetings with this person because they have not shown me that they can be on time. An expectation is a belief that something is most likely going to happen. So notice that I use future tense there. An expectation is something that we believe is going to happen in the future. So putting an expectation on somebody looks like expecting them to be on time. You expect them to show up at the predetermined time that you both agreed on. That is an expectation. But we can look at past experience with that person to see if the expectation is something that we are setting them up for failure on their own, or if it's something that we are using to hurt our own feelings as well, because sometimes we can overlook the expectations we have on somebody and allow that to overtake our boundaries. So, and the last one is standards. So to me, Standards are requirements before you will engage in that relationship or that situation. So if you think about that example of your time being valuable, the standard can be, I will not allow my time to be disrespected. That is a standard that you have placed in your life that you respect, and you make sure that nothing happens to go against that. So for me, a standard is the past, a boundary is the present, and an expectation is the future. So you set the standard, you engage and verbalize your boundary to those people, and then the expectations are what come with you sharing your standards and boundaries. So the standard is, I will not allow my time to be disrespected. The boundary is, my time is valuable to me, so I will not plan more meetings with anyone who cannot show me that they can be on time. And the expectation is based on the past experiences of that person or that situation that you know, and whether or not there is going to be a chance that that person will be on time or will be late. So expectations kind of set us up to judgment. So expectations are kind of that thing that we want it to happen and we believe it's going to happen. But we have to be mindful that we can set good expectations as well. It's never good or bad. The energy is just there existing. But we can set up good expectations. So a good expectation would be, I expect that this person will be on time because they respect me. That's a good expectation. Instead of putting the bad expectation of, they've been late in the past, they're probably going to be late again. That's a more negative expectation. So for me, a standard is more of a yes or an invitation. A standard is saying, this is what I require to be part of my life. A boundary is more like a no, or kind of like a rule that you place on that if this standard changes, then I have to be willing to accept or change my expectation of you to fit with this relationship. So a standard can also look like, say you have agreed to yourself that you will not date anybody with a criminal record. No criminal record at all. That is a standard you have. So anytime you are on the dating apps or looking for a new mate or whatever you are doing, that is something that you keep in mind, that you know you will not go against that standard. No criminal record. So you find somebody, you start dating, everything's going great. After a while, they get arrested. So here's where the boundary comes in. This is where you get to decide, am I willing to go against the standard that I placed in my life to accept this person how they are, expect change from them, because we can expect things in our relationships, and I will go into that a little bit more too. Can I expect them to do better so that I can stay in this relationship with them? Or have there been things within this relationship that have led up to this that have shown me where I have been lack on my boundary? It's really interesting once we get into it. So we can have expectations in our relationships. If I share my standard of, we will be in a monogamous relationship with my partner, I expect them to respect that if they want to continue dating me. That is an expectation that we can have in our relationships. You can do the same thing with friendships. We expect our friend to be there for us when we need some extra support, and that can be one of our standards. I need someone who is going to communicate clearly with me that they support me. That is a standard that you can place. The expectation is, by allowing your friend to know that, which is part of the process too, we have to make sure that we are letting these people know these expectations and these standards and these boundaries that we have. So if you let your friend know that you want to be supported more in different circumstances, there is that expectation that that friend will step up and do that for you. So the boundary here can be, if that friend does not step up for you the way that you need it, then that friend may not be the person for you to be friends with or to reach out for that kind of support for. So now, let's talk about how we communicate these to the people that we love, because it can feel very scary to begin setting boundaries if you've been in a relationship for a while. It's very hard. It can feel very hard to do sometimes. But we have to recognize that it is very important for us to respect ourselves and to allow other people to give us that respect as well. So, having healthy boundaries, knowing what your standards are, and minimalizing your expectations, because we don't want to have too many expectations on people, but there are parts that we expect people to live up to as that role in our lives, because everybody plays a different role in our life. We play a different role in other people's lives. There are expectations put upon us and upon other people for those roles that we play in those different relationships. So, communicating your boundaries. This can be very scary because sometimes we have to establish new boundaries for ourselves. So, the example that I first used about your time being valuable to you, so making sure that you do not allow other people to disrespect or take advantage of your time. That can be a very hard boundary to establish, especially if you are a recovering people pleaser or someone who is used to just kind of going with the flow and letting other people decide what you are doing as a group. So establishing that boundary of not allowing yourself to be disrespected is not just about finding your time valuable. It's about finding yourself valuable. It's about finding that self-worth and knowing that you deserve to have that boundary respected by other people. Now, we understand that emergencies happen, or, things can happen. We understand that that does come up every once in a while, and as long as the person is communicating with us that that thing has happened, they can't make it in time, things like that. It's all about clear communication, which is also a good, healthy boundary to have, is clear communication. We can't expect people to know what we're thinking or what we're feeling. We have to verbalize that, and it's hard to communicate those things sometimes, but the more you start to express what you're feeling, the easier it becomes to express what you're feeling. So, recognizing that allowing other people to disrespect your boundaries is allowing disrespect to happen to you fully. It's not just that they are disrespecting your time and energy, they are disrespecting you. And you have to establish whether or not that is a person that you want to keep in your life. It can be very tough because once we start to recognize that we have boundaries and that we want to change our boundaries or really put boundaries in place, then that means that we need to step up and communicate as well. So all of those boundaries that we are putting in place for other people and hoping that they can respect them for us without having to end the relationship or the connection that we have with that person, we also open ourselves to a lot more things that may feel uncomfortable to us, like communicating or confrontation. And I'm not meaning confrontation like getting in a fist fight with somebody, but making sure that if they do overstep one of your boundaries, that you are clearly communicating with them, hey, I did not like the way that this made me feel. This is something that I do not feel is respectful of me. Being able to say things like that to people and then allowing them the space to accept that, to apologize. We don't need an explanation from people because explanations can turn into excuses. So we have to be mindful of that as well. But there are times where an explanation can be helpful, especially if this is the first time that someone has overstepped a boundary that you have made clear to them. So say you have established your boundary. This person has overstepped your boundary. You have clearly communicated, I don't like the way that made me feel. I feel disrespected by that. Give them the space to explain how they're feeling in that time, in that space as well. Because sometimes it can just be a recognition that, oh, I was not even thinking about that. I'm sorry. It completely slipped my mind that that was a boundary of yours. It completely slipped my mind. I wasn't thinking, something like that. So, yes, that can also be an excuse, but we have to recognize a lot of times people are not thinking outside of themselves. We are so caught up in our own heads with our own lives that most of us are not near as worried about anyone else as much as we think everyone else is worried about us. So, giving that person the ability to apologize for overstepping that boundary or disrespecting that boundary that you have, and then giving them the grace and the compassion to change that, to fix it, to make sure that they don't do it again. Now, if it's something that you have to continually remind a person of, then they are disrespecting your boundary, and that is where you have to make the decision whether or not you are clear enough for yourself on what your boundary is and have been clear enough for them. And if you have, then it's recognizing that maybe that person does not belong in your life. So I've noticed something in myself recently in the past is that I felt that I was communicating what I needed out of my relationships, and then I was getting frustrated whenever those needs were not being met. But when I went back to look at the communication that I was having and the conversations that I was having with my people about my needs being met, I wasn't being clear on what those needs were. I was just coming to them completely overwhelmed. All of my boundaries had been completely walked over. I was a doormat at that point, so I was just overwhelmed. I was at my wit's end. I came to these people saying, I need more from you. Basically, that was all I told them. I didn't tell them what that more looked like. So now I'm recognizing that if I'm starting to feel overwhelmed, or I'll use an example that I've been feeling recently, I feel like recently I have been lacking some support in my life from the people that I'm closest with, the people that I typically reach out to for support. It is getting better because I have opened up lines of communication with them now. In the past, I would sort of create some distance. We kind of remove a little bit of the effort that we're putting into a relationship if we see that the effort is not getting returned to us. We never want to be in any kind of relationship for any kind of return, but there has to be some equal effort. There has to be some give and take in relationships. It's only what's fair. It's only what's fair if you are giving and supporting and putting in effort for the relationship for the other person to do that as well. That is a healthy expectation to have. Effort meets effort. But I was recognizing that I wasn't clearly communicating what I was needing. So I was needing extra support in different areas of my life, but I wasn't opening that line of communication and having that conversation with my people. So not only was I getting frustrated that I would be overwhelmed, overstimulated, coming to my people saying, I need more from you. They're saying, okay, and then I'm not receiving what I need. Then it kind of built up this little bit of resentment, this little bit of disappointment, because I had these huge expectations for them to fill these feelings and this void that I felt that I had, that I didn't even know how to communicate to them what I needed in those moments. So now what I'm doing is I will take time to assess. I will take time to assess how I'm feeling, what it is that I need. I meditate, I journal, I do all of the things to observe what it is that I am needing in that moment. It may take me a couple of minutes, it may take me a few hours, it might take me a couple of days, because sometimes it is rooted in childhood trauma or some sort of inner child healing or some sort of shadow work that we have to peel back all of those deep layers on to finally get to. But I do eventually get to what I'm needing in that moment, at least in that very moment. And I am able to tell my people then, this is what I am needing. And then that gives them the opportunity to step up and offer that to me. It also allowed me to realize a lot of the things that I was expecting other people to give to me were things that I needed to give to myself too. So those healthy boundaries, it goes both ways. We have to make sure we are establishing healthy boundaries with other people and with ourselves, because we have to make sure that we are first and foremost respecting ourselves. Because if we are not respecting ourselves, we will allow other people to disrespect us as well. We want just as much for the people in our lives as we do for ourselves to be treated with that love and respect that we know that we deserve. Thank you for being here for today's episode. I hope you found any of this helpful. Let me know if you did. I'll see you again next week. Take care.